Hi, Dr. Samuels.
Hey, how are you? Great.
Welcome to a new year of ACT program webinars for healthcare professionals. I'm Robin Geiger, SVP of Clinician Advocacy for Ingenovis Health. We are excited to start the new year discussing ways to reduce stress by practicing mindfulness. And our guest speaker is an expert and published author on the subject. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Dena Samuels, PhD, who serves as a mindfulness-based diversity, equity, and inclusion author, speaker, consultant, and personal and professional development coach. She is an award-winning tenured professor at the University of Colorado for over 20 years. She now consults and coaches full-time on mindful, inclusive leadership development. She's authored several books and many other publications. Her latest book, The Mindfulness Effect, An Unexpected Path to Healing, Connection, and Social Justice, offers 25 mindfulness practices for health, wellness, self-empowerment, culturally inclusive leadership development, social and environmental justice. She serves her community through yoga, mindfulness, and cross-cultural dialogue. And I'm really excited to have this interactive session with her. Welcome back, Dr. Samuels.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. I really appreciate you. And thanks, Ashley, too, for all that you do to make this happen.
Yeah, we couldn't do this without Ashley and the team. So we're excited just to kick off another year with you, especially our clinicians are, definitely on the front lines. I'm sure they encounter a lot of stress. There's always talk about clinician burnout in the media. So this is a really nice way to start off the year. Can't thank you enough for being here. And if you're ready, we'll get into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy New Year as we're here.
Happy New Year. Okay, so we're going to start off, and I'll let our audience know we're doing more of an interview session with Dr. Samuels, and she will be sharing some data on slides. It's more interactive, and she'll also lead us through some mindfulness practice. So I'm excited about it. But if you're ready for the first question is, what is the difference between meditation and mindfulness? If you could share that with our audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the question, because it's one that I get quite a lot. There's a lot of confusion around that. People are like, well, is one, or they'll interchange them as though, they're the same thing. And the way I look at it is mindfulness is an umbrella of practices. That's sort of the larger term. And then when we think about all the different ways meditation or mindfulness happens, one of those is meditation. Yeah.
Okay, and I understand. So, but meditation is not a part of mindfulness.
Well, it's in other words, if there's an umbrella, if mindfulness is the big one,
Right.
meditation is one of the ways you can practice mindfulness. So there's many other ways you can practice mindfulness, which we'll get into. Yeah. Mhm.
Nice. Okay. And then what is your thought, or is there statistical data to support which practice is best for reducing stress within that mindfulness realm of like meditation or just quiet time? What's best? What's the best way to really center and to reduce stress?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and it will give a little bit of an overview of what mindfulness is.
Okay.
And we'll also go into just that question about, what are the benefits and how do we know that these are really true? These are the benefits that exist. So
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and share. Can you see that?
absolutely. Could see it.
So folks who are participating or who are attending, this is the best way to reach me. If you're interested to learn more when we go, I'll put this up again at the end, but
Yeah, that would
just
be
wanted you
helpful.
to see that. Yeah. And so when we think about mindfulness, these are some of the words. If you can read around this, this slide, you can see the awareness. It even has the word meditation in there as one of the pieces, but your sensations that you're experiencing, your breath, you're focused on your own personal emotions, those kinds of things. And this is one of my favorite ways to think about mindfulness is this Viktor Frankl quote, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And when I think about mindfulness, I feel like it's one of the most direct, well, there's a lot of ways we get freedom, but personal internal freedom, I think mindfulness is the vehicle we can use to get there probably the most efficiently. And from my perspective, probably the most effectively too. But lots of different ways to get freedom, but mindfulness is such a beautiful practice for that. And then I think about this, I always want to honor, whenever I'm talking about mindfulness, I always want to honor where it came from, because obviously, especially as a white person, this did not come from anybody who looked like me, right? This is not where it began. So we think about Eastern practices, Eastern philosophies, we think about indigenous cultures, some religions also practice, they may not use the word mindfulness, but prayer is one form of mindfulness. Honestly, when you think about meditation, you could think about prayer, you could think about so many other things we'll talk about. But when it was, I think about that it was brought right roughly around the 1960s or so, from the East into what I call the westernized world. I would also use the word the colonized world, okay, into the West. So it can be based on religion. It doesn't have to be. It could be based on spirituality. It doesn't have to be. It could literally just be paying attention to this moment, being aware and focusing on the breath, which is something we'll do in a few minutes. And there's a piece to this too about non-judgment. We think about maybe perhaps Buddhist practices, we think about not judging and not harming, right? This is all part and parcel to mindfulness, right? We wouldn't use mindfulness, well, I should say it this way, Eastern practice would never use mindfulness as a way to harm, right?
Right.
By the same token, some people, it's really interesting. I've worked with first responders, for example. I've worked with police departments talking about mindfulness, and they were like, yeah, we teach our people, our police force to be mindful before they actually shoot their gun. And I'm thinking,
Wow. Yeah.
different way of thinking about this. That's not what I teach necessarily. But it's just interesting when I think about what mindfulness, what it is meant for. It's really meant to bring peace within to every person who practices. And when we have peace within, we tend to exhibit and exude peace, which point calms the whole, whatever's happening, calms the whole situation down, which is why Viktor Frankl's quote is so important to me, because it talks about that space between reacting and responding, right? If we're reacting to something, we probably are not going to be present, aware of the present moment. We're just reacting, as opposed to taking that space, taking that pause, and then we can respond if we choose. We might respond differently if we take a breath before we do so. So we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So I talk about noticing without judgment, and I'm saying not only judging how we judge, we tend to judge others, and we're taught to judge others. We're taught to stereotype and all of those things, but it's also noticing without judging ourselves. So I'll talk about that, especially when I take us through a practice, is just to be gentle with yourself as you're learning, right? And what I practice is insight meditation, what I teach, I should say, is insight meditation. And it's really about focusing on the breath. It's called Vipassana. These are just a few mindfulness practices. Some of you may not even realize these are mindfulness practices, but these are all ways of becoming mindful. It's sort of, when we think about getting in the zone, that's what we're talking about. So given these are just a few examples, there's a million more, but I just wanted to do the ones that come up most often. I'm going to just ask folks who are there, if you would be willing to use your reaction at the bottom of your Zoom screen and just click a thumbs up if you actually do any of these practices. And I think we'll still see it if we're shared screen.
Yeah, it looks like many of them actually do
Okay,
already. Yeah, that's awesome. I need to be
great.
like them.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. Yeah. Okay, so this is good to know too, because you may not have, like I was saying, you may not conceive of these things as being part of a mindfulness practice, right? We're very, we're scattered in what we do. And until we understand what mindfulness is and what it does for us, we may not even make the connection there. So I'll talk about what non-traditional meditation is in a few moments. I love the idea that we don't have to just be sitting on a cushion practicing meditation to be doing mindfulness. There's a million other ways we can do it. One of those ways I put here is standing in line. You can follow your breath, watch your breath, focus on your breath for a few moments when you're in line, rather than feeling so impatient, like when maybe you're at the post office and you're waiting and waiting, or when you're around a whole crowd of people and you're thinking, oh, it's cold and flu and COVID season, that kind of thing, but you don't have a choice, like you have to be there. It's focusing on your breath actually calms you down and actually does so many good things for your health. So I'm going to focus on that because, Robin, I wanted to get back to answering the specific
Okay.
question you asked about that. So when we think about mindfulness for health and wellness, the person who is probably best known in this field is Jon Kabat-Zinn, who some of you may have heard of. MBSR is mindfulness-based stress reduction. And he's very well known. He's at the UMass Medical School in Boston. And what he has done, he's written a ton of books. I would recommend them. There's a million books on mindfulness. Mine is just one of them. But really, to give you some practice or to understand the scientific approach, I would go to Jon Kabat-Zinn. If you want to understand how to incorporate it into your life, you could either, look it up that way or read my book, which literally takes you through one step at a time. And there's also a journal that goes with it that you can get that actually walks you through each of the stages, each of the chapters of the book. So if that's helpful to folks, just in terms of how to incorporate.
Sure.
Yeah. This is one of the most important statistics that I can think of around mindfulness, is that when you think about mindfulness, you typically don't, like, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't really think about the scientific community, right? You would think about meditation, and you'd think about retreats or spas or, a meditation room or something like that. You wouldn't really think about, the science. And I think Jon Kabat-Zinn is one of many who has done a tremendous amount of research on what mindfulness can do for us in terms of our brains, in terms of our health and wellness, our well-being. And this has been corroborated in 600,000 scholarly articles. It's not 600,000 scholarly articles showing the benefits of mindfulness on your health. So this is not a question anymore. This isn't like, will it or won't it or anything else. It has been studied from the brain all the way down, to try to make sense of just how good is this. And one of the pieces too is that it actually the studies show it creates new neural pathways, which we talk about neuroplasticity. We talk about wanting to get rid of, to eliminate bias in our lives. The only way to do that is to create new neural pathways. When we're doing yoga, for example, I'm a yoga instructor, and one of the things we do is we get into postures that are really challenging. For example, if anybody does yoga, chair pose is nobody's favorite, right? Everybody hates chair pose. Your arms are up and you're squatting down. And this is supposed to be, really great practice, but everybody shakes during chair pose if you stay in it long enough. And just the shaking alone actually creates new neural pathways. So there's so much medical, scientific research around the goodness that comes from this. And so if, I always say there's a warning here that if you are interested in doing mindfulness, it actually can change your life. And I'm going to say, I'm happy to say for the better, right? Here are some of the very few, but some of the many, many, many results that you can get from mindfulness. So it reduces, this is huge, just this alone. If this is all it did, this would be a phenomenal practice for everyone, right? Anxiety, stress, and depression, like that. This is what we want to reduce. We have more stress in our society. We have more anxiety and depression, especially during and after COVID, right? Because COVID never really ended. And so there wasn't really an ending day. First time we got vaccinated, we were thinking, okay, yay, it's over. And guess what? It wasn't. So yeah, a lot of depression and a lot of what's happening in the world and all of that. So it reduces, all of those things. It increases our focus. It increases our broadness of understanding what we're perceiving in the world, and gives us flexibility of attention. This is directly out of some research, and I have so many articles, but if you want to Google it, Google Scholar is probably the better way to go. And you'll find this in so many of the articles as well. Finally, it improves your ability to regulate your emotions. And this is where calming ourselves down so that we're less anxious. This is the key here, right? Just literally putting your hand on your heart and following your breath is a beautiful mindfulness practice that actually regulates and downregulates your emotional, if your emotions are agitated in some way, that you can actually just put your hands on your heart and it actually calms you down, right? If you're focusing on it, right? Like you do this and you're still yelling at someone, that's probably not going to be great. But if you can focus on your breath and just pause for a moment, that's already a mindfulness practice. That's super helpful. And so the studies have shown, again, 600,000 articles on the benefits, right? Not just on mindfulness, but on the benefits of mindfulness, show over and over again a cumulative incremental improvement in well-being and quality of life. So yeah, I can't speak more highly about it. I'm gonna pause here and get back to you, Robin, because I think that hopefully answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. I'm enjoying just listening. And one of the attendees mentioned Zen and Zen. And so she was wanting to point that out, is what she said, but I think she's following and enjoying the presentation.
Oh, Zen, say it again. Zen and
Zen, Zinn, and Zen is what she
okay, Zen, yeah, yeah, Zen, right. That's
is
a good
what she
one.
pointed out.
Yeah, there's
Right.
many books by John Kabat-Zinn. That's phenomenal. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question that I had for you, which you answered about, you shared about, the beneficial effects on like health, blood pressure. It was one of the questions specifically. And you talked about some of the long-term effects of practicing mindfulness. What are like the immediate, just to paint a very, clear picture of immediate effects on practicing mindfulness, because I think last time you shared that there's some things that can happen like right away, and that's very helpful.
Thank you. Yes. And that I'm glad you mentioned blood pressure because I thought I had put that on my slides, but I hadn't. There's so many other metabolic kinds of benefits that come from this. And again, please feel free to look it up and do your research. You don't have to just take my word for it, whatever, even though I've, studied it for so long.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah, thanks.
I've read your book.
Thank you. Thank you. So when I think about that, the benefit, like the immediate benefit. So I'll if I can, I'll give you a little bit about how I started, because sometimes that helps people who either haven't started or need to be given motivation, shall we say, to get started again.
Me and me.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you
So
go. Yeah. So I think about, when I started, I was, just to be very honest, I was coming out of my own healing journey. from horrible, horrific, childhood memories of abuse, of all kinds of, every kind of abuse you can think of. The answer is yes.
Oh,
And I share about it a little bit in the preface of my book. I don't go get into graphic detail because I'm not trying to re-trigger anyone, but I started having memories of that in my, it was actually in my 40s. And after I finished my PhD, I graduated, and memories started flooding. And so I couldn't sleep. I wasn't, all of that. What I thought were nightmares turns out were memories. So thank you for the love. And what ended up happening was, through lots of help and wellness and self-care and all the things that I was learning how to do, one of the pieces was mindfulness and meditation. So I started the beginning. I was told you should really be doing yoga. And I was like, I can't even connect to my body yet. I'm not in any condition to do that. Now, of course, all this time later, I'm, been a yoga instructor for 10 years at this point.
wow.
But at the beginning, I really was not able to regulate my emotions at all. And what I started to do, the small step I took was I downloaded an app, and on the app, it gave you options of a 3-minute practice that was a guided practice, because I didn't really know what I was doing. So I tried that, and I loved the app because it actually tracked how many days in a row you did it. And I was what do we call it? Recovering type A personality, which is no longer my perk, by the way. That's one of the things mindfulness has
Wow.
done, not made me so, I gotta get this done, Um, so but at the time I wanted to see progress. I wanted to see what I could do. And so I started with 3 minutes, and even 3 minutes seemed like a really long time at that time. And I did it for 30 days straight. And by the end of 30 days, I deleted the app, because I was like, I know the benefits of this so well at this point. Like, my life had transformed so much, that in such a peaceful way, that I was like, I'm never going to not do this. I don't need an app to tell me to do it anymore, right? I know I'm going to do this. So that was sort of the beginning for me. And I do feel like when I think of the benefits personally, I think about being able to regulate my emotions was huge. I couldn't even connect to my emotions. And little by little, I was able to not only notice them, but realize when they were activated. And so that how do I activate instead my parasympathetic system so I can calm myself down? And so that was probably the biggest transformation. And I knew I had gotten somewhere when, and I don't remember if I've shared this story with you, Robin, or not, but there was a moment where there was a point where I remember my breath started to calm down just on its own. And I noticed it. I was like, why is my breath, like, I can feel that I'm breathing much slower. Why is my body doing that? And I started looking around to see, where is there stress? Where's the stress coming from? And sure enough, I did recognize it, but the breath, I had practiced so much just in 30 days. I had practiced, every single day, that my brain learned, oh, there's a correlation here between calming your breath and calming down when stress happens. And so when I realized I was calming down before I even recognized, my brain even recognized the stress, I was like, okay, this is a cool place to be. I was very happy. Yeah,
That is so, you automatically went into that
it's automatic.
that centering zone. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. Yeah, those are some of the questions and some of the benefits that I noticed. And I'm going to be honest, last time we did this, I started practicing mindfulness for a week and a half. And then it was like I do it randomly and sporadic. I was still even doing it just in those sporadic moments, I'd still feel, a lot more calmer.
Mhm.
a lot more centered. For me, it's after working all day, I want to watch TV, I want to jog, I want to do something. I'm still really amped, and I wanted to be able just to sit and relax and
Mm.
not run lists and think about tomorrow. So it really helped me with that. And I stopped, but I'm going to start again. So I'm glad you're with us this year.
Mm.
Um,
Can I say one thing about that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's a excellent point. When you think about what can it do for you today, for
Right.
example, and we'll practice in a few minutes, but what it can do is it pauses anything that my great teachers would say to take your shoes off at the door. It's sort of like if you imagine in your head that you're stepping into a room, you're taking your shoes off, and your shoes are going to be there when you get back. And your shoes, in this example, are representing all the stressful things, what you did, what you said, what you should have said, what you didn't say, what you need to do tomorrow, what you need to do tonight, all of those the stuff that's,
Right.
call it monkey mind, right? That you leave the shoes at the door, right? And then you come into this really calm, centering place. And the shoes are going to be there. So it's not like you're letting go of anything that you need to hold on to. And you're not going to forget anything. It's just a moment to calm yourself. And then when you pick that stuff back up, you start to realize that your relationship with it is a little different, right?
Mhm.
That it's not weighing you down and making you feel so antsy and just heavy, right?
Right.
It
Right.
just feels lighter. It feels lighter. And that's something that if I could give that gift to everybody on the planet, oh,
Mm. That sounds amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. And I spoke last year on, building resilience and self-care. And this was one of the ways to do that. And I embedded what you had taught us and what you brought to us. And it was really nice to be able to kind of hear it again and know that I needed to do it. It's like I know that I was missing something or missing that piece. So what we're finding um, within my circle is if you don't, after you start practicing it, then you'll notice the opposite, that you're staying in that zone all day, that you're hyper all day and you're not able to kind of reset. So
Mhm.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's huge to be able to do that. And clinicians run lists all the time, especially if they're traveling clinicians or they travel for work, then they're thinking about back home and, bills and, making time to go to the doctor when they're back home and different things. And it makes it really difficult to stay in the moment where
Mhm.
you are and just, be there and be there for the patient. So I'm hoping that this will be helpful. So the other question for you was about timing, like rituals, like how often is it beneficial? I mean, do you have to do it every day? Speaking on what I was just prefacing, I mean, can you do it like once a week or once a month? When is it going to lack that symmetry of being really beneficial for you?
So I would say there's not really harm in practicing as much as possible, right? So when I say that, that might be different for every person. I don't, even though I've been practicing for, over a decade at this point, almost decade and a half, actually, almost. Um, I don't sit for 2 hours. I don't even sit for an hour. Like that's not, there's some people who do, and whatever works for you in your life. But some people think, oh, I don't have time to meditate. And I'm thinking, you don't have time not to. Like
Right,
when you start doing it and you realize how clear your focus is after you meditate, you get so much more done that you're like, where did the time go? Like it just flew. I got everything done that I needed to, and now I actually have time to, enjoy my dinner or whatever it is, right?
right, right.
Um, and so I think that the answer to that is it is different for each person, but I would say at a minimum, you could start with, we'll talk about the 10-second vacation, which 10
Okay.
seconds once you learn how to do it. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And before we get to it, I just want to mention a few others that you could, when you're standing in line, focusing on your breath, like you can incorporate it into what you're already doing. And like you said, that's what you did, that you started noticing, oh, or you'd find a time you stopped at a red light, whether you're on the bus or you're driving,
Right.
whatever, you stopped at a red light. You don't have to close your eyes. You can just focus on your breath and say, I'm now inhaling, and now I'm exhaling, whatever. And you'll notice that it will calm your system down. And there's a million other things. I mean, I put all those examples up of like, if you like to go walking in nature, or you like to draw, or you like to crochet or knit, or whatever you like to do, or you like to ski, or you like to, whatever it is that gets you, it just alleviates the monkey mind. That's really
Right.
what we're going for here. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And I know you're right because again, I'm prefacing when I was speaking to an audience because it was really funny. I was telling them about my macaroon story. It's a long story, but I hated macaroons for years and now I love them. But, you know, I think I started with, mindful eating or like cooking because I love to cook. And even just seeing the steam and the smells and then the presentation, just taking my time and doing that was a way for me to kind of take a vacation from everything. I have to be careful with the eating, right? But even that, slowing down and actually, cutting my food really slow and taking small bites. I found myself doing that a little bit last night when I was out to dinner with some colleagues. I was like, I'm gonna just take my time here for a minute. This looks amazing. So I think you're right. Just finding those small vacations is better for me than trying to like actually organize a time and lay down and try to quiet myself because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Not right away, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that example of mindful eating. I mean, we have mindful walking where you're just focusing on your feet on the ground, each step you take. And really, when you focus on something other than what's going on in your mind, you can really be present in this moment. And I think mindful eating is actually a more advanced practice because our culture teaches us, and for some folks, I should say, because for
Right.
others, they are used to it based on their culture. But in the westernized world, we're taught to just eat the food, pound
Go
it down,
fast.
go to eat it standing up, as you're on the run, whatever, in
Right,
the car, whatever.
right.
And it's not a mindful practice. And I think to say to somebody who's just starting out, try to be more mindful in your eating. I think it will, I don't know that they would get
Resonate. Hmm.
how to do that. But when I talk about mindful eating, maybe it's something, and if there's so many practitioners on Zoom right now
Right.
who have already done some mindfulness, maybe this is a time, if you haven't done mindful eating, maybe you can try it. It's actually a weight loss. I will say that too. It's a weight loss
Yeah.
technique because you're eating, we tend to eat very mindlessly. And so we're just putting the food down.
Mm.
And if you are paying attention using all your senses, you know, uh, in terms of, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? What is it, if there's, maybe you've got snap, crackle, pop in
Right. Or literally for me, it was hearing
your
the knife on going on the plate, just little
yeah,
sounds, right?
exactly. Just really focusing on what it is. If it's done in a way that's pretty, that feels like, oh, it feels satisfying just to look at, you're already consuming it just by looking at it, right? So by the time you taste it, if you can
Powerful.
take a moment to really taste each bite, you'll end up not needing, as much as you normally do to get that feeling of satisfied, right? Uh,
Right.
yeah, and so there's a million other things, but that's actually a good start to be thinking about. One of the ways you can incorporate mindfulness that would be obviously beneficial to many people who are wanting to eat more mindfully.
Love that.
Yeah.
And definitely you articulated that very well. So thank you for doing that. But that's everything you said just resonated. I've tried to slow down just a little, and that's the only time I can really slow down. So I think that's what turned into just trying that at that moment for me. So you mentioned already about the timeline and commitment. Basically, it's whatever works for the individual, just trying to actually practice. So what are some of the best settings? And I know you mentioned in line. Does it matter where you are? I mean, it doesn't. Okay. And
My
yeah,
Yeah, from a social justice perspective, then my two favorite things is mindfulness doesn't cost a penny and everyone has access to it
mm,
at all times.
I love that.
Yeah, you just have
And
to remember you have access to it. Yeah.
I love that. And then, so the next question was like, how do you actually practice this? Or would you like to take us through
Yes,
so-
yes,
a
yes,
practice session? Okay.
too. Um, I will say this, that because you had mentioned before that you were doing it for about a week and a half and then you stopped. And I want to say this because I don't want to forget after we
Okay.
practice,
Sure.
just that I have timers.
Oh,
Even today, like even all these years later, I have timers set on my phone for every hour of the day. I have a timer that is set so that no matter what you're doing, you could be in the middle of an email, but if the timer goes off, no matter what it is you're doing, you're not going to forget
right.
what it was you were trying to say. You pause. I take my fingers off the keyboard, just pause and breathe. If you have a mantra, that's a beautiful time. Maybe I have a mantra every
Listen,
day, so it's a reminder to say the mantra in my head. It gives me a moment just to pause, and then I go back to whatever it was I was doing with a clearer head. So, yeah.
I like that too. I
Mhm.
love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I shared with our audience about timers as well. And we're starting to see questions come in. I told them we'd probably answer them throughout because we're doing this interactively. But do you want to take us through a practice session before we start? And I see your question, Joseph, so we'll definitely get to you. But yeah, so all
I would,
yours. Okay.
yeah, I would
And
love to.
I'm gonna hide from camera unless you want me to stay on. Okay.
So I would say, one of the best leadership tools that I use is called the 10-second vacation, which I mentioned earlier. And so I'm going to teach that because it's something everyone can use any time of the day. And I will take longer than 10 seconds to teach it because I want to make sure that everyone understands what it is we're doing. But when you get the practice down, you'll be able to do it in 10 seconds, like later today. So what I'm going to invite folks to do is, and you could do this at any time of day, whether you could be in the middle of a meeting. Once you get it down, you don't even have to close your eyes. But for now, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or gaze down unless you're driving or something. Please don't. But you could do this. You can follow along even if you're driving, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like you can be aware of what's going on and really be focused internally. And that's what I'm asking you to do. So if you're in a seated position, just focus first on your body. So I'm going to invite you to just go internally and just notice what's going on in your body. Just notice your breath. Notice if there's anywhere in your body that feels any kind of tension or discomfort. And as you inhale, focus on those places. And then as you exhale, just spread some love, some light, some peace even to those places in your body that need it. And you'll just notice that might be a little bit of release. If there was some pain, there might be slightly less pain. And if not, it's just a practice. So just go with me on it. And as you practice, it gets better and better. So I'm going to invite you now to just come back to your breath. And on a count of 4, I'd like you to inhale. So you could use seconds if you want. You don't have to look at a clock. Just count to 4 slowly in your head as you inhale. And then exhale for a count of 6. And try that again when you finish that, come back up for an inhale, count of 4. And exhale for a count of 6. And you can continue that process as I'm going to continue to talk about what you might be feeling in your body. Just notice where your shoulders are. Maybe they're down a little bit further away from your ears. Maybe you feel a little bit more grounded into the earth. If your feet are on the floor, especially, you can always do that grounding piece where you focus on your feet touching the earth. It's a beautiful practice, beautiful grounding practice. You can also focus on your heart space. Just notice in front, behind, above, below, around your heart. Just see what happens when you focus on your heart. Some people get a flow of maybe love or joy or sometimes gratitude. Just notice what comes up for you. And if nothing comes up, that's perfectly fine too. Again, it's just a practice. And then go ahead and finish your last round of inhaling for the count of 4. And exhaling to a count of 6. And then when you're done with that, go ahead to just normal breathing. And go ahead, if your eyes are closed, go ahead and flutter them open. And welcome back. So that is what I would call a 10-second vacation. I would love for you, if you're able, to click on a reaction or even put in the chat what it feels like to you, or if you had a positive reaction from it. Yeah, please feel free to write in the chat if there are.
I think the chat's disabled, but they can definitely write in the QA and I can share that with you. And also the reactions are like amazing. I almost didn't want to come back to you for a minute.
Yeah.
It was really nice. And it came to me, and if you'll allow me to say this, but I think that this would help me greatly with like centering myself to go to sleep.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The biggest comment I get from people is they have a sense of relaxation, calmness, a sense of peace, that they didn't have before they started. And so when you think of just that alone, you can do that. I took a lot longer, as I said, than just the 10 seconds, but you could be in the midst of a meeting. People are talking over each other and there's, chaos happening, and you can literally just pause and, you can sort of witness what's going on with your eyes open, but be focused inward and count to 4 on your inhale and 6 on your exhale. When you extend the exhale longer than the inhale, it actually activates your parasympathetic system and it indicates to your brain it's time to calm down. So it really is, it's so good for your brain and so good for your physiology. Yeah.
I love it. And so what it has done is it's kind of decentralized my programming. And now I'm like, what do you want to do next? I love it. Do it again. You have a question. We can go to a question, or we can hold it and I can continue with our questions a bit, but I think you've answered quite a lot. Yeah. So the next question that I had for you, and then we'll pivot to Joseph because he has something really nice to share. Someone said that it's great. There was lots of celebration sent, some heart sent. And I agree, it's really nice. What's even better is this will be available on demand so they can rewatch this and have your guided practice with them for just a second, just a snapshot of what you can do for a consult. So it's wonderful. So you mentioned how you practice. You've taken us through a demonstration, which is nice. And we talked about some apps. And I wanted to ask you for a little bit more guidance on which ones are your favorite. I know as far as the ACT program, which we are really proud to offer our clinicians different tools to help them with mindfulness, with meditation. Amicare app has been very nice. It was created by a Buddhist monk. There's like 60-second meditations, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I think you're referring to some of those small little moments as vacations, but I know that you have some other apps too, or maybe you have one that what's your go-to?
Yeah, so am at the point now where I actually don't use an app, but I know of
Oh,
many of them because it's my
okay.
business to know.
Okay.
But there's so many. The one that you use at ACT is
Amicare.
yeah, Amicare is really lovely. It's, it does have some great options in there, and it's it's the reviews are wonderful about it. So I would definitely start with that one since I think it's free to you all.
Right.
So yeah, so that's great. There's also Calm, which most people have heard of, Headspace. One of my favorites is Insight Timer. I like it so much that I've actually have all the meditations, like the guided meditation, the 25 mindfulness practices from my book are actually on Insight Timer. If you have Insight Timer, you get it, you can literally just put my name in, Dena Samuels, and up will come, and they all are numbered so that you can see, which one's first, and whether you have my book or not, you're welcome to use the meditations.
How do you spell that? Is that just one insight or how is that?
Insight, INSIGHT
Okay, so it is. And okay, one word. Insight timer.
timer.
And then Dena Samuels. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, those are a few. Those are a
All
few.
right, I appreciate that. And then, so you have a question. I say we just keep them through, and that way, we can end seamlessly here. But Joseph has been waiting. Thank you so much, Joseph. He's a registered nurse on a very busy unit. It's difficult to do mindful eating while working, which is also practice when not working because your mind is trained to eat on the run, is what he's saying. However, he found that practicing mindfulness when providing care to his patients. I love that.
Yes, yes. Oh, that
This,
gives me chills.
yes, I just got chills too. Joseph, that's amazing. This gives the patient the best quality care and reduces stress level to a tolerable level.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm glad that thank you for sharing that. But I can almost picture him or her or who, I can picture them doing this where they're just really taking their time with their patient and giving them those few minutes of just one-to-one time. And I can see how that would be very mindful.
It's wonderful. The another benefit of it, which most of you may already know, is that the calmer you are, the energy in the room gets calmed down. So you're actually doing even more care than you might even realize just because we know that stress can increase problems in,
Right.
you know, um, it can make whatever's going on even worse. So that if you're calming yourself down, you're actually, and the way you're speaking, the way you're showing up with your energy, your calm energy, it's going to calm your patient down, and that's better for them. That's the best care, I think. That's wonderful.
I love that. Thank you, Joseph. I may use your quote in something. It's just ridiculous. It's amazing. I just
Yeah.
can't even think. And it brings me back to when I was in the ICU and just certain, and I'm sure there's clinicians and nurses, allied doctors who will think about this, but when they are on a ventilator, but they're aware, you literally have to find ways to connect with them. Even I'd put my hand on my chest and on their chest and I would breathe and try to tell them, okay, just it's okay. Because if they're excited, they're gonna buck the vent, which
Right.
breathe against it, and their vitals will go high and out of whack. So you'd have to find ways to connect with them using your voice, using your hands. And I didn't realize that that could be very mindful because you have to be yourself, very calm. But thank you. And Joseph said, you are so welcome.
Oh,
Um,
well, I want to say one other thing
sure.
about what Joseph said, that while you're at work, You can't, while you're in the midst of it, you can't, it's hard to eat mindfully. Really, a beautiful place to start is to have one meal a day where you even just pause before you eat. So it may not be that one, right? Maybe it's for breakfast, maybe it's for wherever you can fit it in. And this is for everyone. You can just start with just pausing and reflecting on the fact that maybe it's gratitude, maybe it's, whatever. It doesn't have to be a religious or spiritual practice. It's just taking a pause and saying, okay, I'm about to ingest this food. That alone will calm your system down and make it ready for food. Yeah.
I love that. Um, I think we're getting close. Ashley gave us the warning, so we're getting close. But you wrote a book, and I know you mentioned a little bit about your book, but just and we talked about some resources. Is there anything else that you would want to share about your book or like a really helpful resource? It would be really nice too if you wouldn't mind sharing that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me, can you
I,
see?
well, it was shared and now it's not. Maybe
Um,
try one more time.
Here it is. Sorry for the delay.
Yep.
Okay,
There's
you
a
can see
share.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are my two latest books. And the Mindfulness Effect, obviously, is the one we've been talking about, and the Insight Timer. So there's that. And then I just want to share with you, these are some of the things that I do now as an entrepreneur after 20 years of teaching in the classroom. I do private coaching. That is all mindful, it's definitely mindfulness centered for envisioning your future, thinking about your unlimited potential and how to get there. I do group coaching for an organization or department to develop more effective leaders. So that's leadership development. I also have a certificate program that I do called FED. I call it Get Fed, which is facilitating effective DEI discussions. If that's something you or somebody that might serve them in that way, please feel free to have them reach out. And this is the best place to reach me is on my website. There's a contact us form that folks can go to.
DenaSamuels.com. And you do have another question. I'm going to try to squeeze it in. Thank you
Sure.
so much, Laura Lee. I'm a respiratory therapist and I've traveled for 4 years through the pandemic. I never would have made it through without mindfulness and meditation.
Beautiful.
It's incredible. It's incredibly hard to maintain peace through a critical situation when life and death is at stake, particularly since everyone in the room is so highly charged. Oh, I remember that. Any tips for maintaining peace and better yet, how to spread peace during a critical situation? Thank you
Yeah.
for that question, Laura.
Beautiful question. I think I probably would say, that focusing inward and being present. I think that when you're present in this moment, because oftentimes when a situation is charged, everybody's thinking about what the worst case scenario of what could happen. And sometimes the worst case scenario is in fact happening. But we know, all the research, and I'm sure from personal experience, we all know that when you're in that kind of situation, staying revved up in that way is not going to be helpful. So that just the idea of the grounding practice that I suggested that you could do on your feet or when you're sitting down, of just focusing on your feet touching the floor, that already shows your brain that you're not flitty and flying all over the place, that you are actually grounded on this earth, right? That's actually, that I would recommend. And the other thing is, as much as possible, and you can do this while it's all going on, you can just focus inward. If you have a word that you like that feels really good to you, and it might change on a daily basis or monthly basis or whatever, just say that word to yourself. It might be peace. Some people love the word relax. Some people hate the word relaxed. So I'm not going to say you need to use that word. whatever word, and just even ask yourself, what would feel really good to me right now? What word would be helpful? When I'm stressed out, what would be, and just see what comes to you, right? And you can use that if you're able to, which may not be the case. You may be using your hands, but if it's possible to put your hands on your heart, usually that can give signal to your brain just to calm down in the moment. Those are just a few. I could go on, but I know we're out of time.
No, that was really good. And if I may, I remember running codes and being in that situation. So you definitely always have someone, everyone has a job to do. Maybe make sure that you appoint one mindful person in there to keep everybody focused. Because during that time, that adrenaline is helping you save a life. And so you're probably going to be able to, not going to be able to do very much except stay in that moment. But at the end, it might be really nice to connect with everybody and level set. And you seem like the right person to do that, Laura Lee, to connect with everybody and make sure that you can remind them to do something to recenter, if that's helpful.
Yeah, one other piece I was just thinking about in a
Yeah.
situation like that, confidence, I think, is absolutely critical. And I think we all walk around. I think part of the anxiety in that situation comes from our self-doubt. And if we can remind ourselves that we've got this, that we're trained for it, that we love ourselves. Self-love is, to me, is like, it's a thing that I wish everyone had. If you have self-love, you can pretty much do anything, within reason or not, right? The world is completely unlimited potential if you love yourself. And so I can't stress that enough. Yeah.
And it looks like everybody agrees with you. They're sending hearts like all over the place. And then you had, so thank you again, Laura Lee. And then another colleague of yours said, it is truly inspirational to listen to Dr. Samuels once again. I was a student of hers, her
Oh.
teachings and readings a few years ago, Marie Kari, and she wanted to say hello to you and thank you for bringing this work to us, Dr. Geiger. Thank you so much, Marie. We really appreciate that. And is there anything that you would want to leave with them other they know how to find you? Also, I'm going to put in the chat if you have questions for her and you can't get, for whatever reason, you don't have the information, we are happy to send her this information. If you email the ACT program at act@ingenovishealth.com, we can get those over to her. We have her on speed dial, so we'll be able to find her. But we really appreciate it. And I know that we are running short on time. That someone else, someone named Christy Harrison, wanted to send a shout out as a former colleague. All to Dr. Samuels as well. Thank you, Christy, so much. We really appreciate it. And honestly, I love running out of time with you because it just means that this was just really needed. Thank you for joining us today. We certainly hope that you'll continue to join us monthly for our webinars, and this will be available on demand. We are so proud to share it, and this is a great way to kick off the new year. So thank you, Dr. Samuels, for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Robin. It's such a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Yeah, I appreciate it so much. And I think that's all that we have for today. So